The silence of the station was absolute. Cole Davian's breath rasped in his ears, harsh and uneven, amplified by the confines of the helmet he had hastily repaired. The air he inhaled was thin and metallic, a constant reminder of the limited oxygen in his tank. Around him, the skeletal remains of an alien research station stretched endlessly, its walls bearing scars from decades of neglect and forgotten skirmishes. The flicker of emergency lights painted jagged shadows on the bulkheads, making the place feel more tomb than refuge. He slumped against the cold wall, exhaustion weighing him down. His legs trembled, threatening to give out entirely. Days, or perhaps hours, it was impossible to tell how long, had passed since they'd abandoned him here. Those alien bastards, their chittering laughter still echoing in his mind, had stolen his tools, stripped him of his weapons, and left him to die in the station's decaying husk. They didn't even bother to give him a second glance as they departed, their sleek ship vanishing into the star-specked void. Cole tightened his fists, the sharp pang of his nails digging into his palms, anchoring him to reality. He couldn't afford to lose himself, not now. They'd underestimated him. He wasn't some disposable human cog, as they'd called him, soft hands, one of them had sneered. He was a survivor, an engineer who had outmaneuvered systems more complex than the alien mercenaries could fathom. If they thought they condemned him to oblivion, they were wrong. Dead wrong. He forced himself to his feet, his body groaning in protest. The meager rations he'd scavenged from the station's mess hall were running low, just like his oxygen. The station systems were a patchwork of barely functioning circuits and flickering consoles, but he could work with this. He had to. Cole started toward what he hoped was the main operations center, his boots echoing in the hollow corridors. The station was massive, far larger than he'd first realized. Its labyrinthine design, clearly alien, made navigation a challenge. Pipes snaked along the ceiling like exposed veins, dripping a viscous, greenish fluid in some places. The air reeked of mildew and chemicals. Still, he kept moving. Each step brought him closer to understanding this place, and closer to survival. He found the operations center at last, its bulkhead door jammed halfway open. He crouched low and squeezed through the gap, his breath catching as the edges of his suit scraped against the jagged metal. The room inside was a wreck. Broken monitors hung loosely from their mounts, their screens cracked and useless. Debris littered the floor, and what looked like scorch marks marred the walls. A firefight had taken place here long ago, though the details were irrelevant now. What mattered was the dormant console in the center of the room. Cole dropped to his knees and pried open an access panel, his fingers nimble despite the ache in his joints. The circuitry was alien, but the fundamentals were familiar. Power conduits, processing cores, manual overrides, it all followed a logic he could trace. He smiled grimly. They might have left him with nothing, but they hadn't taken his mind. His greatest weapon was intact. As he worked, his thoughts drifted to how he'd ended up in this mess. He'd been on a salvage mission, scouring a derelict cargo freighter for tech worth selling. A simple enough job, or so it had seemed, but the alien mercenaries had intercepted him, their hostility immediate. They'd accused him of trespassing in their territory, a ridiculous claim given the freighter's drifting trajectory. When he tried to negotiate, offering to share his haul, they'd overpowered him. They weren't interested in his cargo. They wanted leverage. An engineer with human ingenuity could be useful. And useful he had been, until they decided otherwise. His jaw clenched as he rewired the console, sparks flying as circuits came to life. The console screen flickered, displaying an alien script he didn't recognize. He tapped into the station's database, navigating its archaic system with ease. The station had been an experimental outpost, its purpose long abandoned. Its creators had left in a hurry, but they hadn't taken everything. Scattered through the station were caches of supplies and equipment, more than enough for a man with his skills to repurpose. The screen's glow illuminated his face, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He could work with this. He could survive. The low hum of the console brought his focus back to the present. He had power now, enough to stabilize life support in this section of the station. The oxygen recyclers were sluggish but functional, and the ambient temperature began to rise marginally. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He leaned back, his breath steadier now. The flickering lights around him cast long shadows, but they felt less oppressive than before. As he surveyed the room, his eyes caught something glinting in the debris. He reached for it, brushing away the dust to reveal a compact plasma cutter. It was a standard industrial tool, its surface marred by years of neglect, but it still had potential. Cole's smile widened. His enemies might have stripped him of weapons, but they couldn't take everything. A plasma cutter wasn't just a tool. It was the beginning of his arsenal. They had made a mistake leaving him alive. The thought burned in his mind, a fierce determination taking root. The station wasn't just his prison. It was a weapon waiting to be awakened, and Cole would awaken it. The aliens believed they had condemned him to a slow, pathetic death, but they had underestimated the human will to adapt, to endure, to fight. He would make them regret every decision that led to this moment. The hum of the console grew steadier, filling the room with a low vibration that echoed through the walls. Cole stood tall, gripping the plasma cutter tightly. He could feel the station's potential in every pulse of its machinery, in every dormant system waiting to be revived. This place wasn't his grave. It was his battlefield. He turned back to the console, his mind racing with possibilities. The aliens would come back eventually, out of greed, curiosity, or to mock the corpse they assumed they'd left behind. When they did, they wouldn't find a broken man. They'd find a force of retribution, one who had turned their carelessness into his strength. Cole's breath slowed, his resolve crystallizing. He had work to do. The station came alive under Cole's relentless focus. What had been a lifeless, decaying relic now hummed with the faint stirrings of revival. The faint glow of reactivated systems illuminated his work, casting eerie, uneven light across the corridors. With every wire he spliced and panel he repaired, Cole felt a growing connection to the structure around him. It was no longer just a station. It was a living thing, something he could mold into a weapon as unforgiving as the void beyond its walls. Time blurred as he labored, his hands moving with practiced precision. The plasma cutter, his lifeline, became an extension of his will. He stripped useless systems for parts and scavenged dormant machinery for tools and raw materials. The station had clearly been abandoned in haste, leaving behind a wealth of technology Cole could repurpose. As he delved deeper, he uncovered long-forgotten compartments filled with supplies. Ammunition for railguns, experimental drones and storage pods, and mining equipment that could be converted into devastating weapons. The station's artificial intelligence flickered to life one night, or what passed for night in this timeless place. A soft, toneless voice issued from the console as he calibrated an energy grid. Its language was alien, but its intent was clear, a greeting. Cole froze, unsure whether this activation was a blessing or a threat. He hesitated before responding. Using a combination of gestures and a rudimentary translation program, he'd managed to cobble together. Slowly, haltingly, the AI adapted, switching to a crude approximation of his language. "You are not authorized," it said, its words disjointed but comprehensible. "No," Cole admitted, his voice rasping. "But I'm the only one left." The AI paused, its flickering display an uncertain rhythm. "Station requires command. Systems damaged. I'll repair you," Cole replied, an idea forming as he spoke. "But you'll obey me now. No one else." The AI seemed to process his demand, its hesitation lingering just a fraction too long. Then, with a soft chime, it relented. Acknowledged. New command authority established. Cole allowed himself a thin smile. This was a turning point. With the AI's cooperation, he could access systems far beyond his initial grasp. The station's security network, once dormant, now responded to his commands. Surveillance feeds revealed a vast network of corridors and chambers, some he hadn't yet explored. Automated defense turrets sparked to life, swiveling obediently under his control. It was a start, but far from enough. If the mercenaries returned, it wouldn't just be numbers he faced. It would be superior firepower. He needed to tip the scales. The first upgrade came from the mining lasers he'd found tucked away in a storage bay. Designed to cut through asteroids, they were clunky and power-hungry, but devastatingly effective. He mounted them strategically, wiring them into the station's power grid with careful calculations. The AI helped optimize their placement, creating overlapping fields of fire. Cole tested one by activating a laser on an abandoned storage crate. The resulting explosion left no trace of the crate, just a scorch mark on the deck plating. Satisfied, he moved on. Next came the drones. Small and insect-like, they were designed for maintenance and exploration, not combat. But Cole saw their potential. He stripped down the non-essential systems, replacing them with makeshift weapons, blades, plasma cutters, and even small explosive charges. Their new programming made them autonomous hunters, capable of navigating the station's labyrinth and eliminating intruders. Watching them flit through the corridors, their metallic wings glinting in the dim light, Cole felt a grim satisfaction. The station was no longer defenseless. Each day brought new challenges. The station's power grid struggled to handle the increasing load, forcing Cole to prioritize which systems to activate. He spent hours in cramped conduits, rerouting energy and reinforcing the structural integrity of the weakest sectors. His hands bore the scars of his labor, his nails blackened and skin blistered from the constant exposure to heat and sharp edges. Yet he welcomed the pain. It meant progress. Despite his success, the solitude gnawed at him. The station's vastness only amplified his isolation, its empty halls echoing with memories of laughter and conversation that weren't there. He found himself speaking aloud, even when the AI didn't respond, just to hear the sound of his own voice. It was a small comfort, but it kept him tethered to his humanity. He couldn't afford to lose that, no matter how deep into the machine he delved. The first test of his work came unexpectedly. A scavenger ship, likely drawn by the station's faint energy signature, approached under the cover of darkness. Cole watched them through the surveillance feeds, his pulse quickening. They weren't the mercenaries, but they were armed, and their ship's markings suggested a crew with little regard for diplomacy. They docked at the outer bay, unaware they were stepping into a death trap. Cole activated the drones first. The intruders barely had time to react as the small machines swarmed them, their makeshift weapons slicing through flesh and armor alike. Those who survived fled deeper into the station, only to trigger one of Cole's traps, an explosive rigged to a pressure sensor. The blast reverberated through the corridors, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Cole sat back, breathing heavily. The station had proven itself, but the sight of the carnage lingered in his mind. He wasn't a killer by nature, but survival demanded no less. The scavengers had chosen their fate when they invaded his sanctuary. Still, he felt a flicker of unease. This was only the beginning. The mercenaries would come, and they would bring far more than a scavenger crew. As he repaired the damage from the skirmish, he found himself speaking to the AI again. "They'll come back," he said, his voice quiet. "They'll want what's here, or they'll want me dead." The AI's response was immediate. "Station prepared. Enemy will fail." Cole chuckled darkly. "Damn right they will." He stared at the monitor, the faint glow of the console reflecting in his tired eyes. The scavengers had been a test, but the real fight was coming. He could feel it in his bones. This station was no longer a derelict ruin. It was a fortress, a weapon forged in desperation and ingenuity. And when the time came, he would use it to show his enemies what it meant to underestimate a human. The station lay in wait, its dark corridors bristling with concealed malice. Cole watched through the surveillance feeds as the alien ship approached, its sleek hull glowing faintly against the backdrop of the stars. They had come. The mercenaries who had left him to die were back, drawn by the faint power signals he'd let slip intentionally. He leaned forward, his fingers brushing the edge of the console. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with the raw anticipation of revenge. The alien vessel docked at the station's primary bay, its landing struts locking into place with an audible hiss. Cole adjusted the camera angles, tracking their every move as the airlock cycled open. They stepped into his trap with the same arrogance he remembered, their weapons at the ready, but their posture lazy. He recognized their leader immediately, Rivik, a towering figure with iridescent scales that shimmered like oil under the harsh lights. Rivik barked orders in a guttural tongue, his squad fanning out to secure the area. Cole's lips curled into a grim smile. They didn't expect resistance. Why would they? As far as they knew, the human they'd abandoned had long since suffocated or starved. The station was theirs to plunder, its secrets ripe for the taking. Cole would make them regret that assumption. The first trap triggered as the mercenaries moved deeper into the station. A laser grid, concealed in the ceiling, flicked to life with a sudden hum, slicing through two of Rivik's soldiers before they could react. Their bodies crumpled to the floor, the acrid smell of burnt flesh filling the air. The survivors barked in alarm, weapons raised, scanning the empty corridors. Cole watched their panic grow, his fingers dancing over the console as he activated the next sequence. The drones swarmed out of hidden alcoves, their metallic wings a cacophony of sound as they descended on the mercenaries. Blades and plasma cutters flashed in the dim light, carving through armor and flesh alike. Rivik's soldiers fought back, their energy rifles lighting up the corridors, but the drones were too fast, too numerous. Blood spattered the walls as the machines tore through their ranks, leaving chaos in their wake. Cole leaned back in his chair, his breathing steady. This was a war of attrition, one he designed to break them piece by piece. The station's narrow corridors funneled the mercenaries into kill zones, where automated turrets unleashed precise bursts of plasma. Explosives rigged to pressure plates detonated as they advanced, turning their own footsteps into instruments of destruction. The air filled with their screams, guttural and desperate, as they realized the truth. They weren't raiding a derelict station. They were walking into a nightmare. Rivik's voice crackled through the station's comm system, a guttural snarl of fury. "Who is doing this? Show yourself, coward." Cole didn't answer immediately. He let the silence stretch, the weight of his presence pressing down on them. Finally, he tapped the microphone, his voice low and cold. "You left me here, Rivik. You thought I'd die like a dog." Rivik's expression twisted into a sneer as he glanced toward one of the cameras, his sharp teeth bared. "Davian, I should have known you'd cling to life like the vermin you are. You should have finished the job," Cole replied. "Now it's my turn." The feed cut abruptly, leaving Rivik and his dwindling squad in suffocating silence. Cole's heart raced as he monitored their movements. The leader was clever, rallying the survivors and adapting to the station's defenses. They began to destroy cameras, severing Cole's visual access to certain sections. He anticipated their moves, rerouting drones to intercept them at critical junctures. Still, Rivik's tenacity was undeniable. He was driving his soldiers forward, deeper into the heart of the station. Cole felt the weight of the confrontation looming. He had planned for this moment, but the enormity of it pressed down on him. Rivik wasn't just a foe. He was a specter of betrayal, a living reminder of everything Cole had endured. The final confrontation wasn't just about survival. It was about closure. The mercenaries breached the operations center, the bulkhead door exploding inward with a deafening blast. Cole stood waiting, his plasma cutter strapped to his arm and a makeshift energy rifle slung across his back. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the console behind him, casting long shadows across his face. Rivik stepped through the smoke, his weapon raised, his cold eyes locking on Cole. "You've gone to a lot of trouble for a dead man," Rivik growled. Cole smirked, the tension in his chest hardening into resolve. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Rivik charged, his soldiers fanning out to flank Cole. The room erupted into chaos as Cole triggered the traps he'd embedded in the walls. Energy bursts erupted from hidden turrets, and the floor beneath one soldier collapsed into a pit of jagged scrap metal. Cole dug behind a console, firing precise shots with his rifle. Rivik moved with brutal efficiency, cutting down one of Cole's drones with a single swing of his blade before advancing. The fight was a blur of motion and sound. Cole's traps thinned the mercenaries' numbers, but Rivik was relentless, his scaled armor deflecting glancing blows as he closed the distance. Cole ducked under a swing of Revik's blade, his plasma cutter flaring as he drove it into the alien's side. Revik roared in pain, the blow staggering him, but not stopping him. He lashed out, his fist catching Cole across the jaw and sending him sprawling. Cole scrambled to his feet, his vision swimming. Revik loomed over him, blood dripping from the wound in his side, his expression a mix of fury and triumph. "You're nothing," Revik hissed, raising his blade for the killing blow. Cole's hand shot to the console behind him, slamming a button. The energy grid he'd rerouted into the floor activated, sending a surge of electricity through Revik's body. The alien convulsed, his roar of pain echoing through the chamber before he collapsed to the ground, smoke rising from his scorched armor. Cole stood over him, breathing heavily. The remaining mercenaries had fled or fallen silent, their fate irrelevant now. Revik stared up at him, his eyes burning with hatred even as his strength ebbed away. "You think this changes anything?" Revik rasped. "It changes everything," Cole said, his voice low and steady. He turned away, leaving Revik to the silence of the station. The battle was over, but the war wasn't. Cole knew the stories would spread. The legend of a human who had turned a forgotten station into a death machine, who had taken vengeance on those who wronged him. He didn't know where this path would lead, but one thing was certain.